The Pokémon Company has just announced a brand new rule set for VGC battles in the Pokémon Scarlet and Violet video games. And with it came a bunch of new Pokémon that we are now able to use. So in today's video, I'm going to go over all the details that you need to know to be prepared for this upcoming regulation, as well as some of my past experiences from regulations very similar to this and how I think that this meta is going to get shaped up. So let's get into the video. Alright, here we are over on Cerebi.net with the Regulation G rule sets for this upcoming rule set in Pokemon VGC. I'm excited. This has been kind of a common theme that they've done, at least in the past games that I've played in, where we've kind of played through the game, and at the very end, we get all these kind of legendary Pokemon that we definitely were never able to use, but now they kind of just flood the gates and let us use them. So, Regulation G is definitely going to be very, very interesting. Now, the time frame, and there's really only a couple things that we're going to talk about in this video. One of the big ones is going to be the time frame for this regulation. So it does not start until May 1st. So that means we do have still some time in Regulation F, which means, you know, it's not quite over yet. It isn't going to be popping up in like a week or so. We still have an entire month, so it's going to be a little bit. We still have Regulation F. Get to gaming. I think there's actually just a brand new Master Ball reset ladder that popped up for Regulation F in the last season of it, so get on and start battling. But Regulation G will kick off May 1st and will go all the way until August 31st, so we're going to have a nice little chunk of time with it. Now, we do know that there isn't going to be a new Pokemon mainline series game coming in this year, so we have a couple different options after that, like 31st mark hits. They're either going to extend Regulation G and just have another season of it, basically. They might give us a different format, which I'm not really, like, I don't understand. Maybe they might give us a different format. Like, I think it happened in Sword and Shield once where they kind of stepped back and took them away and then brought them back. So, like, who knows? Who knows? But I do know that there's going to be a new game once August 31st hits, so we are going to have some other regulations pop up in the meantime until the next game does come out. Now, the big thing with this regulation, there is nothing different in this regulation to Regulation F other than the usable Pokemon in the meta. So everything else is the same. Battle timer, all the other Pokemon that you were using before are still available. Nothing was removed from the meta. There was only additions. And so the additions were that we are all going to be able to use one restricted legendary Pokemon on our team. You don't get all 6, you don't get to have this massive team of Super Saiyans coming in just ruining everybody, but you do get one. So what this does is actually changes up a lot of the team building drastically, because each one of these legendary Pokemon are super powerhouses to themselves, and a lot of people are going to start building teams around them because you only get one. You're going to build a team that complements them, supports them, and helps them do what they need to, because they're probably going to be one of the big keys of the team coming up in Regulation G. So that is something to think about. This meta, from what I can understand, or from my past experiences in Sword and Shield, this meta is going to change drastically for a couple of reasons. One, I think that with all these spread moves coming with Kyogre, Groudon, and all the Calyrexes and all the other stuff happening, we are going to see a resurgence of Wide Guard. Wide Guard was used a lot in Pokemon Sword and Shield, especially when Calyrex and Calyrex Shadow and Ice Rider, all these Pokemon were available. Wide Guard was around, and I can almost guarantee you that we're going to see a lot more Wide Guard usage coming up in this regulation. Just because it is going to save a lot of Pokemon teams from all this spread damage that is inevitably going to be coming. That is definitely gonna be the big one. The other one is going to be that we are gonna have some terrain things popping up with the Miraidon, Koraidon. So Koraidon bringing out the sun, Miraidon bringing out the electric terrain. Now that electric terrain gonna be a little bit spicy, I won't lie, because there are certain Pokemon that haven't really been able to benefit from the electric terrain because, well, the electric terrain setter was Pikamuku or Pincurchin. Not a great Pokemon. But now we've got all these Pokemon with Quark Drive, like Iron Hands and all these other futuristic Pokemon that are now going to be able to benefit from their legendary Pokemon. That is going to change up a few things. We're going to be basically adding in another terrain into the VGC meta. A lot of what we've had is we've had Grassy terrain from Rillaboom. We've had Indeedee with Psychic terrain. And that's been about it. We probably aren't going to be getting a Misty terrain user in this generation or this regulation because we don't have Tapu Fini. But with Miraidon coming in with these new additions, electric terrain is going to be coming in, and we are going to have, from what I can understand, a third very common used terrain popping up. So that is definitely going to be a change in the meta. overall, the team comps, the team building is going to be a lot different. You're going to see a lot of weather with sun and rain with the Kyogre Groudon. They're very popular in VGC, and I can expect them to be popular as well. Calyrex Ice, Calyrex Shadow are going to be very popular Pokemon from the last ones. Yeah, it's gonna be a wild ride. There's definitely gonna be a lot of changes in the team building and the Pokemon being used. I'm excited for it. I'm really ready for a refreshing regulation. And a lot of people are on the fence, like, they're the restricted legendaries. They're really powerful. It's gonna be really, blah. And then a lot of people are saying, there's going to be a lot of team building changes. There's gonna be a lot of differences in teams and the way people are playing with their Pokemon. I see both sides of the fence, and I'm on the side where I'm excited for a refreshed regulation with new Pokemon and new team building, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly what we're gonna get. Now, with the regulation and the Pokemon that you're actually going to be able to be used, because there are not all of them. You're not gonna be able to use your mythical Pokemon like Zarude, but you will be able to use most of the legendary Pokemon. So let's go through the list now. And I'll kind of, as I'm going through this list, I'll kind of go over like how I feel, how these Pokemon are going to be used in the upcoming regulation from my past experience, and how maybe they aren't going to get used. Starting off, Mewtwo. Mewtwo is just so unfortunate. It was one of the first gen Pokemon. It was labeled as the strongest Pokemon. Unfortunately, with the psychic typing and its stats, it's not the most usable Pokemon, especially with Calyrex around. It just doesn't. It doesn't do enough. I'll be honest. Mewtwo knows a lot of Pokemon moves, but its stats and its typing just does not help it out. And to be honest, you probably won't see a whole lot. Lugia is another one of those exact same kind of Pokemon where it just kind of falls short in the legendary scope of things, where it's just not that great. Its stats don't really work out well. Again, it's a psychic type Pokemon, so with its slower speed, it just doesn't fare well in the meta. And a lot of its moves and stuff like that, from my past experience, it's always kind of hit like a wet noodle. It just doesn't do enough to really to justify that legendary spot being a Lugia. There's other Pokemon that can do what it does, and that's why he doesn't see it a lot. Ho-Oh is actually an interesting one. In Sword and Shield, it was used quite regularly. I did see it used quite often. It is a bulky fire type flying bird that can stay on the field for quite some time. It's got some recovery. It is not the most used Pokemon, but it is definitely a Pokemon that has usage. I've seen it being done, and with the inbound with the terrestrialization to help it with either defense or offense, wow, I could see it being used. I'm excited to see if people bust out the old Ho-Oh. Now, Kyogre and Groudon are two Pokemon that have been heavily used anytime they're able to be used, and it's just because, well, weather boosts their attacks, and that is just, anytime you can boost your attacks is kind of crazy. So Kyogre gets wild special attack moves with its spread, water pulse and all this other kind of stuff that it ends up getting. It's just a wild Pokemon. Kyogre is definitely one of those Pokemon that we will see a lot in this upcoming regulation. We're also going to be seeing Groudon a lot, I'm pretty sure. Not as much as Kyogre. I don't think Groudon gets as much use in this regulation just from the past stuff, because Kyogre definitely does kind of take away a little bit on it, mainly because you can't miss with Kyogre. You can miss with Groudon, and that's kind of the big problem, is that whenever you miss with Groudon, it's a huge miss because you're probably gonna end up dying. So that ends up being the big problem with Groudon. And I just caught myself. I don't know why I said water pulse with Kyogre. It's not water pulse, I'm sorry. It's water spout. That's the spread move that it gets. But anyways, the last weather Pokemon from that generation is Rayquaza. Rayquaza is, again, one of those Pokemon where once it lost its Mega Evolution, it definitely lost a lot of its kind of offensive pressure, and it wasn't used as much. I'll be honest, it's a really popular Pokemon. You are probably going to see people use it, but is it going to be one of those ones that's going to be winning regionals constantly in day 2? Probably not. I'm not expecting that one to be making that top list of used Pokemon. Now, Dialga, Palkia, and its origin forms. Now, this one is going to be interesting. One, because I don't think the origin forms have ever been usable in a VGC kind of a scenario. So I'm not 100% sure how those ones are going to shape up. I didn't use them a whole lot in Pokemon Legends. I don't know what their differences are and how those differences are going to shape up in the meta. I'm not 100% sure. But what I do know is that Dialga and Palkia both were used pretty heavily in Pokemon Sword and Shield's meta when they were usable. They're strong Pokemon. They've got solid typings. Dragon typing is never anything to shake your head at. It resists a lot of stuff, and Well, they have decent special attack moves. They've got decent like ability. Like they're good. Are they as good as some of the other ones? No, and they definitely weren't as popular, but they were used. So I would expect to see both Palkia and Dialga coming up here in Regulation G. Now, Giratina unfortunately has never really been super usable. People have used him. He's been a niche pick. Don't get me wrong. He's definitely not been one of those Pokemon like Mewtwo where people just like try to stay a million miles away from him. But he's just not as good as the other ones. He's gotten kind of, you know, he's a slower Pokemon. So you constantly always have to worry about like, you got to get Trick Room up if you want to really use him. Like it just ends up being one of those Pokemon where his stats kind of shaft him a little bit. And he ends up being kind of seen as an underdog in this meta. So you probably won't see a lot of Giratina. It will be funny to see if people do end up building some teams because they always are pretty funny. But we'll end up seeing how that goes. Now, Reshiram and Zekrom, two Pokemon that, again, I feel like they were like Palkia and Dialga. They were good. They were used. They weren't the most popular, but they definitely have things that they bring to the table. Reshiram being Fire Dragon resists a lot. It's actually a really cool Pokemon. He's got some really nice damaging moves. Same with Zekrom. And with the additions with like, you know, the electric terrain and stuff like that, all those kind of things that are coming up, I don't know. I don't know if Reshiram or Zekrom are going to see a boost in usage or if it's going to stay the same, but I think they're definitely going to be Pokemon that you're going to see coming up here in Regulation G and something you should probably be ready for. Kyurem is definitely one of those Pokemon that I feel like was used more than Reshiram and, like Reshiram and Zekrom. Kyurem was used. It was a very usable Pokemon. Dragon Ice typing actually gave it some really nice resistances. It was able to do some pretty heavy damage. Like, I feel like Kyurem was actually one of the more popular ones as far as out of this kind of middle couple of generations. Kyurem was solid. It's got some really nice attack to it. It definitely, you know, once it hits you, you notice it. It's there. And yeah, I feel like Kyurem, we're going to see a bunch more here, especially with the offensive or defensive Terras in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I think Kyurem's going to be coming in hot. Now, Cosmog, obviously, like, they're baby Pokemon. We're not going to be seeing them. They're on the list because they have to be, but we're not going to be seeing those. Now, Solgaleo and Lunala are interesting options because in Sword and Shield, we did get to use both of these Pokemon. Lunala was used a little bit. It wasn't as much as some of the other ones. It was definitely more of like a D grade. I would say that it wasn't the worst. It wasn't the best, but it wasn't really in the middle. It was kind of on the lower end. It was used. It was decent. And I think with Solgaleo, it was probably used a little bit more. Solgaleo had a little bit more going for it. And as far as the moves, its defensiveness and it just overall, it lasted a little bit longer. Now, when you throw Necrozma into the mix with these two and you go into their like Dawn Wings and Dawn Duskmane forms, they were both used differently as well. And they both actually had usage. I know that the Duskmane was used actually pretty regularly. It was really, really bulky. It was hard to take out. Like that was actually a really, really challenging Pokemon to go up against, especially in Dynamax, because that thing would boost itself and it would be almost nearly impossible to kill. So I'm curious if a defensive Terra typing for a Duskmane might actually make it another really usable Pokemon again, or if losing Dynamax ended up causing it to lose kind of that competitive edge that it had. That one I'm really interested in. Coming up in Regulation G, I think the Duskmane, like Solgaleo, Necrozma combo, I think that's gonna be the one I'm most interested in looking at and seeing kind of how it plays out, because that one was a lot of fun to play. I enjoyed playing that one. And if I can play it again, I probably will. Now, Zacian and Zamazenta. Now, these ones are a little bit interesting. So, Zacian obviously was way more used than Zamazenta in Pokemon Sword and Shield. It had the offensive pressure that Zacian put out towards Dynamax Pokemon was unbeat. You couldn't beat that offensive pressure. Now, coming up into this new meta, from what I've heard, and I could be wrong, but I think some of its moves have been nerfed a little bit. On top of the fact that you lose the boosted damage to Dynamax Pokemon because, well, there are no Dynamax Pokemon. Zacian may not be this top tier crazy Pokemon that we were used to in Pokemon Sword and Shield. And I don't know if Zacian is going to be one of those Pokemon where I want to burn a restricted slot for it when there's no Dynamax Pokemon that we need to knock out in one hit. I definitely feel like Zacian got hit in this meta. I feel like this might not be the best meta for Zacian just for those factors. And I don't think it's going to get as much usage. Zamazenta, though, on the other hand, being a bulky Pokemon with defensive Terra typing, I could see the swing being more for a favor in Zamazenta. Zamazenta was cool. It was nice supportive Pokemon. It helped out with other Pokemon on your team. It was bulky, and with the potential for fighting Terra, or no, like not fighting Terra. I was looking at the picture for fighting, but with like a defensive Terra, I see the swing coming more in Zamazenta's favor in this one. Just because Zacian lost the offensive pressure, and Zamazenta is going to be able to utilize more of the defensive pressure, and I think stay around on the field longer. One of my low key, I think this is my hot take. I think this is going to be the one Pokemon that is going to benefit the absolute most from terrestrialization, and I think that's going to be Eternatus. Eternatus has a wild stat pool. It's really, really high. It's got a lot of stats. It's got a really nice typing in Poison and Dragon. It's also really, really bulky, and the moves that it gets really play well into a stall type Pokemon, and giving it a terrestrialization to where it can have a defensive boosted Terra if it needs to. I really feel like Eternatus might be low-key one of the best Pokemon additions in the restricted format, just due to what it's got, its move pool, like it's what it's got bringing to the table. I'll be honest, I'm really excited about Eternatus. I might build with Eternatus in one of my first couple teams because I think that Pokemon might end up being just top dog. It's a really solid Pokemon, and even in Sword and Shield, it wasn't used a lot. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't the most used Pokemon, but I think now without Dynamax, and I think with the way that the things are shaping up, I think Eternatus is going to do good. I'll die on that hill. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. Now, Calyrex. Calyrex is definitely going to be one of those Pokemon that I think is going to absolutely be in S tier, like with Kyogre. You've got Kyogre, and then you've got Calyrex. I think these two are going to be some of the main staples that we are going to see in Pokemon Regulation G, so you've got to be ready for these two. More so the Shadow Rider than the Ice Rider because, one, I'll be honest, not a lot of people are comfortable with Trick Room. It's a harder set to run, it's a little bit more challenging, and it doesn't always work in your favor as much because, well, you got to set up Trick Room. It ends up not being used as much. Still going to be totally strong and totally viable, but I definitely think that we're going to be seeing a lot more of that Shadow Rider just due to the fact that it's got a ridiculous spread move. It's got really nice stats. It's a ghost type Pokemon, so you can't fake it out. It's getting access to Expanding Force, which was an annoying Pokemon move throughout all of Scarlet and Violet. Like, all in all, this Pokemon gets just way too many things to go with it, where it's going to be a problem here with the rest of, like, I feel like with this Pokemon, the Pokemon you build with it are just going to be just like, it's so good by itself that all the Pokemon just help it even more. And yeah, I think Calyrex Ghost Rider is going to be one of your S+. You're going to see it almost every match. It's going to be everywhere. Koraidon, Miraidon, the two new Pokemons for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now, these ones, I'll be honest, Miraidon's probably going to be one of the other S+++ Pokemon. It's a dragon type Pokemon with electric, and it's got the electric terrain. It's going to match well with all the new Paradox Pokemon we got, like Iron Hands. You're going to see so much of this Pokemon. It is going to hurt. On top of the fact that, well, guess what? One of the other huge problems in this format is going to be Kyogre. Well, now we've got Electric Dragon. Kyogre is going to probably do literally nothing to Miraidon. And so Miraidon is going to check a lot of the people coming from past experiences using Kyogre as the strongest Pokemon. Miraidon is definitely going to check Kyogre into the dirt unless people are, they end up choosing like a ground Terra Kyogre, which, let's be real, is probably going to happen, or people pairing it with like a Raichu or something like that. I mean, it's going to happen. People are going to find ways to deal with the electric because it's going to be there. I mean, you got Miraidon, man. You're going to have a lot of electric type moves and Pokemon, so be ready for that in this regulation. Koraidon is going to be cool. I don't think it's going to be used quite as much, but it's definitely not a Pokemon to shy away from. It's definitely, it's got Sunny Day with it right off the bat. So it'll be used. I don't think it'll be used as much as Miraidon. Now, Terrapagos. I've heard some funny things. Actually, Brady VGC Corner posted a tweet about a spread for Terrapagos. Terrapagos might actually be usable in Regulation G. I think it's going to be kind of like a C tier. I haven't used it yet. I don't know 100%, but I've seen people using it. Somebody got #1 on Showdown for Regulation G with Terrapagos already. It's happening. People are using it. So it'll be interesting to see how this meta shapes up with Terrapagos in it, being as this is kind of its meta the first time it's going to be used. I'm interested. Terrapagos is a cool one. Now, for other Pokemon you still can't use, like I said, there are all the mythical Pokemon, so you cannot use Mew, Jirachi, Deoxys, Phione, Manaphy, Darkrai, which is sad. I would love to use Darkrai as Shaman. No Arceus, no Keldeo, no Meloetta that we caught in game. No Greninja still with the Battle Bond. No Deoncé, Hoopa Unbound, no Volcanion, Magearna, Zarude, or Pecharunt, which is super sad. Pecharunt would have been really cool to use. It's a poison ghost. Like, that would have been fun, especially since it's a new meta. But alas, all the mythical Pokemon have been banned and will not be used. So who knows? Maybe after August 31st, we'll get to use all the mythical Pokemon. Who knows what they have in store for us? But I'm excited for Regulation G. Let me know down in the comments which Pokemon from Regulation G you are most excited to work on team building with, because I know there's a couple that I'm excited for, particularly Eternatus, Calyrex Ice, and potentially Reshiram. I've always liked them. But again, thank you all so much for tuning into this YouTube video. If you like this kind of content from me, make sure you hit that like, that subscribe, and that notification bell so you get notified when I drop more videos just like this. It also helps the algorithm in letting other people know that they should also be watching this video. Again, thank you all so much. I hope you have a fantastic day out in the Paldea, the Kitakami, and now the Blueberry Academy. And until next time, trainers, peace out.